Hi and welcome back to the next video. This is video 11 and here we'll handle just Angular stuff, so create a chat room and a real-time user search with Angular material autocomplete. So basically we are creating like a chat room with a name, with a description, and we are able to add users, and we can search the users by their username, where we query the backend directly, and then we can add them, or we can also remove them, and then we can create the room, and this gets displayed on our dashboard. We also do some minor refactoring, and now we have a quick look at our video structure, which is as always, we have a look at our video outcome, then we read the user story for this, and then we implement the user story and close it. So let's have a quick look what we are building in this video here. So here we can see we have our create room. We can give the room like a naming or a name, so we can, let's name it Wednesday, or maybe I already named it like this. So let's name it Friday. We can give it like a description. For example, for the name, if we have like nothing displayed, this is required, we display like an error. So now everything is fine. And now we can search a user by his username, and then we make this gets filed up like a request against our backend. For example, I can search for A, I can just search for Sam, for example. So I could add Sam to my room. I could able to create a chat room. Now the button here is valid, or I could also remove him again, and then this gets invalid again. So when I add, for example, Sam, I could, for example, add like Walter also, and I create a chat room. And now we have here our chat room created in our list and our dashboard. And you can see it here. Now we have all the users. So the username user Walter, Sam, and also me that created the room are inside this room. And for example, if we are being logged in here with Sam, we are just having the rooms 1, 3, 4, and 5, because here in room number 2, for example, there's Walter and not Sam. So now we have like a room creation here. And we are able to add users by a real-time search against the username from our backend. So let's have a short look at our story here first. So this is the story for video 11, and we are just handling Angular stuff here. So we want to add chat room creation with real-time user search. So basically you want to add like a new chat room, and we also, like we implemented in the last video, the NestJS API, the search by username for a user. And now we want to use this here so that we want to be able, when we create like the chat room, we want to be able to search for users by their username and then add them to our chat room. So here we can use this. And so our story is pretty simple, but the stuff behind in Angular is a bit more complicated. So as a user, we want to be able to create new chat rooms. The chat rooms should have at least a name and one user. And always my own user that I create the room with gets added in the back end. As you remember, because there we strip the user from the JWT token, and we add then this user also to our users array. And we should be able to select the users by a search for the username. So the acceptance criteria are, we want to create chat rooms. We can search in real time for users by their username while we are in the room creation state, for example. We also can remove users before the final creation of the room. So for example, if I add the user Thomas to the room while I'm creating the room, when I decide I want to remove him again, then I should also be able to remove this user and can add maybe like Walt and Walter and so on, like other users. And if there are no rooms, I want to display like a hint on my dashboard so that I'm not being confused. So then we can, I think, start with implementing. One of the first things that we can do, we can in our JSON file allow strict, so that we can also use sometimes null values, which makes it probably a bit easier when we have to reset forms and so on. So first we can go and modify some of our services. So we have like here our chat service. And at the moment we are have it commented out, our create room. So we now want to do this here. And then as input, we get like a room. And then we create the room. And we could also use here our material snack bar. So we could use this here, private snack bar, so that we can inform the user that the room was created. So we can here simply copy and paste a bit from our user service. So we can just use our snackbar.open here, and we can just refactor this or reuse this. And later we have to refactor this maybe in another video where we move, for example, all the snackbar stuff to a snackbar service. And we can also move the services outside of their modules, because now we have we are going to have to access in our private module also the user service. And then this is not ideal. So we want to say room.name created successfully. So basically, when we emit this event, when we say this room was created successfully, we want to display it as a hint close, duration 2 seconds, I think, on the right and on the top side. And then we can use this data in our create room component. And for maybe the get my rooms, we can also add like here, this is like return an observable for the room paginate interface. So as you remember, there we have the items and the metadata, which is like the page and so on, because it's paginated. And then we can also go and do like some stuff in our user service. So at the moment we are just having here our create, where we create a user, but we now also want to be able to find a user by username. So we can say find by username. And then we have like the username, which is a string that we get. And then we want to return an observable. And we said we return an array of users. And this is basically we make get request against our backend. And we get like the user interface array. And here we can use like the backticks to make it easier and understandable. So we go against API users, and then like we named our NestJS endpoint was find by username. And then we have to add our query parameter. So we can simply say so, and then we can assign it to the username, and then we make a get request against our endpoint from our backend. So now we can use this then also later in our service, in our component. So now we can go to our private component, private module, and first we have to import like some stuff. So what we need is we also need here like the reactive forms module, because we are going to have a form for our room and also for our users. We have a met form field module, so we need form fields for our reactive form. We also need inputs. We're going to have the users displayed as met Angular material chips. So we can just Google it, Angular material chips. And this is how you can, for example, display text or so on. But here we can, for example, if we add like a user, we can just display the username here. And we also have easy stuff to remove the user. So we can import this. Because we want to have something like autocomplete. We need the autocomplete module, Angular material autocomplete, because there, for example, we type in the username, and then we want to, for example, like here, if you type 1, then we want to filter or query our backend and have displayed all the users that have, for example, an A in the name, in the username, or the complete username, and so on. So we have our autocomplete module, and we also have to import the met icon module because when we want to display like removable stuff for the chips, I think here this X, for example, this is an icon, so we need the Angular material icon module. We can simply import this also, and then we have like all the stuff that we need in our private module. And then we can close this here, and now we can go to our components, and you can see we have our dashboard component and our create room component, and now we can, for example, go to localhost 4200, so to our public stuff. And we can log in, and now you see we have here like no chat rooms at the moment. So as you remember in our story, we wanted then to display like a hint. So we could go, for example, into our dashboard, and then here above our selection list, we could add like a span element around our list and around our paginator. And thus we just want to display when we have like values. So we can make like a simple ngIf, and then we can use our rooms. So because you see here our rooms, when we have items or we have total items, and then we can say rooms.items.length, and if this is bigger than 0, so if there are items, then we want to display this. Else we want to display, for example, no rooms, and then we can very simple make a ng template here beneath and want to display this instead. So we can add here the no rooms, and then this will get rendered inside here if there are no rooms. So we can make it here like a div, and then we can, for example, just display met error, and we can say no chat rooms for you so far. Please create one or get invited. Now we can look when we reload the page. Now you see on the left we display like no chat rooms for you so far, and we also have no paginator here displayed because this is inside our span element. So now we can go on, and we can probably also do some little bit refactoring here to our rooms. So here we can also say we get like an observable from the room paginate interface. So exactly like we specified here, so that we are like a bit more safe. And on our init, we can also call our emit paginate rooms just to make sure that we always try to catch all the rooms that we have. And now we can go to our create room component, and now we have to add here like our form. So to make it a little bit easier and faster, we can like copy from our login form all the stuff here just to our private component, so to our create room component. And then we can also copy and paste the CSS so that we can save us some time, because this will take a long time enough. And then we can just, for example, name this class not register, but we could name it create or dashboard, because this is assigned to our back button to the dashboard, and here we want to go then to our dashboard. So we can say go to dashboard. And now we have to add like all the stuff here that we need. And the margin we can probably also make a bit smaller for the room creation. So now we have to first thing that we have to do is we need like our form. So in our component here, we add our form. So we say form is form group from Angular forms. And then we can say this is like a new form group. And then we have some options. And this is of one thing, the name. So new form control initial value is null. And then we say this should be required, otherwise the form is not valid. And then we have like a description, which is also a new form control with initial value null, but this could be null, so we don't actually need this. And then we have like the users that we want to add. So this here is then like a form array because we can have many users. Initial value is null and we want this but to be required. And then we have like our basic form. And now we can, for example, rename here. So the first one is not email, but name. So this is from type text, our first input field. Our placeholder is, for example, we could just name a name, and then we have here the name, and then we can replace to display our error that we want to display like a met error if our name was touched. So if the user clicked into it, for example, and got clicked out of it, and if it has an error. And so the same, now it says it's not finding this, so we have to make some getters for this. So we can say get name. We want to return a form control. So we return this.form.get name as form control. And we can do the same for the description. Return this.form.get description as form control. And we can also do the same for the users. So we can say get users. And now we say form array. And we return this.form.get users as form array. So now this error here should be gone, and on the end we submit. So if the form is, if we hit like on our submit button here, then we want to execute the login function before, but here this is actually create chatroom, and then our should not be called this, but for example create, and we can just add here like a create function where we then later send the request to our backend to create like our new room. Then our second field, so the first was our name for our chat room. The second is our description. So our form control name is description, and then we can say if touched and has error required, then we can say description is required. And if the form is not valid, we can say please fill out all needed information. So this is basically the same, and we just want to enable the button if the form is valid. So it is disabled if the form is not valid. And then we can say, for example, create chat room. And now we should have like the basic stuff for our chat room creation. Let's have a quick look in our front end how it looks. So when we click here the button create new room, then we come to our chat room creation, and now we can enter like a name and the description. If I go out of it, it should display normally error for a name, for example, because it is required. For description it is not required, so we can actually also remove this error here. And then we are not able to click on the button because the form is invalid, because it has no users in their users array. So now we have to add like the user search against our backend and to add like the users to our form array for our form group. So we can do this, for example, in a new component. So we can open here like a new terminal, we can cd into our front end, and then we can generate with the Angular CLI like a new component into our private module, into our components, and then we can name this component, for example, select users, and then we will have here like a select users component. And this is, for example, what we can then use here. Beneath our form field, we can say app, so we can use our selector, app select users, and display this here. So you see it here, the selector from our select users component is this here. So with this, we can use our component here. Now you see we have rendered it inside our create chatroom component. And now we have to add there the whole stuff for user selection. So maybe one of the first things that we can do is we can say we have like here an input from Angular, so that we can get values from the parent component, so the create room component, into our select users component, so to the child component. So this is like an input, and here we say this is our users interface. So we can get users from our parent component, from our create room, and can display them here so that we can have all the user stuff in this component here. But we are also with input and outputs connected to our parent component. So we can have here like some outputs. So we can say we want to have an output if we add a user. So then we have like an event emitter from Angular, not from Stream, but from Angular, so that we can emit like an event when we add like a user. So the type is the user interface, and then we have like a new event emitter for user interface. And the same goes if we remove a user. So we say remove user, then we emit an event. And also user interface. So the idea behind this here, we can add like a user. If we select the user and add them to our form, then we make it like an output to our parent create room. There we add the user to the form. And also then we display it here in this form also, because we have it like an input. So this gets updated. And we have remove user. If we remove a user, then we also want to do this in our room form. So this is handled with input and outputs. So now we can add some stuff in our HTML. So we can make all around our mat form field. And then we have like an input where we want to specify, where we want to type in like the username that we are searching for, or just the name, or just like an A, just like a letter, whatever we want to do. So we can use the normal Angular material input here, mat input. We can say placeholder is, for example, search user by username. Then we can bind it to mat autocomplete. We can name it auto. And then we have to create this later. And we have here like a form control that we bind it to. And this could be named search username. And then we have to create this also in our component. And herefore we don't need a form, so we can just say use search username. And this is like a new form control. And then we can use here the Angular material autocomplete. And we can say here auto, and this is autocomplete, net autocomplete. Yeah, and inside this we can make like a ng container to this container to display some stuff. And here we can simply display met option. And this is like the list of users that we get in return from our backend. So we can say here we want to iterate over the users, and then we can say let user. So we just iterate over the array of the users that we found. And so we can say, or we can name it filtered users. So we have to create this here also. So we can say filtered users. And this is basically just an array of users, so like what we get back from our service. And here we can also assign like the value is then the user. And in our met option, we could have like a span element where we display the username. So we could say here we want to display the user.username. And we can also display, for example, display the ID of the user. And we can just say user.id. And now here we have to add like the search when we type in something. So let's have a quick look here. So now, for example, if I type in Thomas, I want to find the Thomas user. So far, it does not work. But of course, we can use then here our search username from control. So we can just say this dot search username dot value changes. So every time the value changes, this will get triggered when we subscribe to it. So then we can simply pipe, or before we can subscribe to this, so to make the observable like hot. And then we can use something called debounce time, so that in milliseconds, from 500 milliseconds, like half a second, so that between the keystrokes, so if I type TH, for example, for Thomas, and then I do like 500 milliseconds nothing, then this gets fired. We can also say distinct until changed. So this will also only trigger if there's like a change in the data. And then we can make a switch map, and here we can make the call to our backend, and we have to import the right switch map from RxJS. And then we have here like the value is then the username that we type in, so it's a string. And then we can just go against our user service that we have to define our constructor. So we say private user service is our user service. And then we can say the user service dot find by username, what we just created, and we give him the username. And then we can pipe this outcome here again. And with a simple tab, we then get like a user's array back. So we have like here the user interface array. And then we can set, for example, our filtered users are the users that we get back from our backend. And we have to add the tab. So now we can try if we can search. So nothing happens. Let's have a quick look. So we have the search for username. Yeah, I think we need like a display function for this. So this goes for the met autocomplete. And then we can use like a display function, whatever we want to name it. So how we want to display them here. So we then can go to our user component. We add a display function here. And so this could be just our user interface. And then we can say if we have like a user, then we return the user.username. And else we return nothing. Let's see if we even make the request. So find by username, API users, find by username T. So this is firing. Are we getting like an answer? So here we get like two objects back, the Thomas and the Walter. So because both are having like a T inside. And now the question is, why can't we display it? Maybe to an array. String contains an invalid character. Okay, let's search for the error. So this here I think seems fine. And now let's go through the HTML. So we have our met form field, we have our met input, we have our placeholder, search user by username, met autocomplete is set to auto, form control to search username. We have our met autocomplete, met autocomplete. We have our display with, we have our display function. We have our entry container, we have the met option. There, you see it here, it's the error. And now let's see if it now works. Yeah, you see now we get like the answer from our backend, so I could also search for Walt when I get just a Walter. And now I will have the value here displayed by the display function, so just the username when I click on it. And now if I, for example, do 500 milliseconds nothing, then the search fires up again. So this seems to work quite nice. And now we want to add, like when we selected the user, we want to add him to our form. So now we want to, we need to use our button. So we can say Angular material button. And now if we set the type to submit, or if we set no type, then we will get an issue, because when we have in this parent form for create chatroom, we have two buttons that will be triggered by submit by the parent form. So we have to set this specifically to button so that we don't fire it here. And then we want to do something on click. And this could be add user to form. So this is what we need to add to our component. And then we can simply name this add user. And then we add this function here to our component. And then, we have to see how we can get the user from our met autocomplete here that we select, so that we can add this here. So there is something like for our Angular material autocomplete. When you selected an option, then we can do something. So we can say set selected user, and we can add this here also, set selected user. And then we have here like the user that we get from user interface, and then we do something with it. And we can simply set this here when we say event.option.value, so that we get the value here from the user. And then we have to select or set the selected user here in our component. So we could, for example, say selected user is a user, and initially we have it null. And then we want to set the user, so we can say this dot selected user is user. So we set him. And then when we add the user to form, so then if we hit like here our Angular material button add user, then we execute this add user to form. So then we want to have like an output. So we can simply say this dot add user. So because we named our output add user, then we emit an event. And this is then basically simple our selected user. So then we can add this in our parent component to our form. And afterwards, when we selected this, we want to reset our filtered users. We want to reset our selected user because we already added him then. And we want to reset the search username form. So we set the value to null. And now we can see when I type it in here, Thomas, when I can say add user, then we get cleared again. And what we can also do, we want to just disable or enable this button if we have like a user. So we can say here, this is disabled. When our selected user is not chosen. So if this user here is selected user is null, then our button is disabled. So you see it now, he is disabled. When we set the value, then it gets enabled. So now we have to catch this value here in our create room. So first we can see we have here like what we want to bind it to are our users. So this is our users.value. As you remember, we have made here like a get for the users. And so then if we just insert like the users, then this is like the form array. So we want to insert the values. And then we can also do something on add user. And this is, we want, how do we name it? We can say add user, init user, and then this is basically just the event. So we now have to do something here called add user. And there we want to just push into our users here, so we can make our get. So this dot users here, then we push. And here our user form control that we get here, user form control. And this is like form control. So we push now our user form control into our array. And then we also have like here before we have to init our user. So we have to init like the form control. So we can say init user. And this is getting like the user. And then we return a new form control where we have like the ID is the user.id. Then name, the username is the user.username, and the email is user.email. So I think if I remember correctly in our NestJS backend, we are just looking for adding the users for the ID, but yeah, we can just use this here, that's not bad. And when we have here like the add user, we also can add like a remove user. And we can, for example, remove a user by his ID. And then we can implement this later when we have it in our child component. So when we now add a user, so if we catch like an event add user from our child here, from our child component, then we init the user first that we get from our child component, and then we add the user to our array. And since we always pass in our users form array, then this should get displayed in our select users. And at the moment we are not displaying any users, so we probably should change this. So what we can make here is like we make a met chip list. And then we have our met chip. And here we can just iterate over our users. So we can say let user of users, because this is our input array. So you see it here, input users. And then we can display here, for example, our user.username. And we can also say we only want to display the met chip list if our users.length is bigger than 1. And else we want to display the no users. So then we can, at the bottom here, make a ng template. And we can say no users. And we can simply display like a met error, no users added so far, for example. And then we can go to our form. No, why are we not getting this here? Yeah, it should be bigger than 0. Let's see. So we have ng if should be written correctly. And now you see we have no user added so far. Let's try if we can add, for example, Walter. And now you see we have added Walter, and this is, and then we have reset the field. So this is basically with our met form field. When we search with the input username, we listen to the value changes here. So if there's for 500 milliseconds not changing anything, not again having like a keystroke and nothing and something changed, then we make the request against our backend, and then we set the filtered users, and the filtered users are being displayed here in our container as met options. So this is like this field here, and when we select one, then we say option selected, and we set our selected user here, set selected user that we have here to the user that we selected. So for example here to Sam, then this button here gets enabled, and when I click it, then we have the add user to form called. So you see it here, add user to form. We get, then we emit like an event to our parent component, the add user event with our selected user. Then we reset all the stuff here, and in our create room we catch this event here, the add user, then we init like a user and add it to our stuff. So here first we init like a form control, and then we push this into our users array here. So now we also want to like be able to remove users. So metrips have like a very simple thing for this to do. So we can use this and don't have to reinvent some stuff. So we can just add here like removed, and then we can say like remove user from form, and this is then the user here. So we also have to add this here, remove user from form. And then we can display here also a met icon. And this can be the cancel icon. And this has to be met chip remove. And then when we remove the user from our form, here we want to also like emit an event, and then we have like our second output, then remove user. So then we want to say remove user dot remove user dot emit. So we emit like then again an event to our parent component with our user here. And then we have to catch our event. So we say remove user. And then we have to do it. So we can say remove user from form. Or we can just say remove user. And here we give him the event. So this is like the user. And here we have at the moment done nothing. And we can change this event to event.id, so to our user ID. And then we have to remove the user by ID from our users array from our form. So we can just say this.users. Then we can remove at an index, and since we are not knowing at which index it is, we can say this.users.value. Then we can try to find an index. And then we get like our user. And then we can just say where user ID is our user ID here. And then we want to remove this and this index. So let's see if this will work. So when we say we have like here a chat for Wednesday, we make like a sample description. Then we search for A, we have Sam, we can add the user. Now you see we have here our cancel icon displayed. So if we click it, then the user gets removed again and the form is invalid. If I add Sam again, then our form or our button is enabled. We can create a chat room. Yeah, I think at the moment, yeah, you see it here, our create function is still empty. So we have to add here now also the logic. So we say if this.form is valid, then we want to do our stuff. So then we want to call our chat service that we have to use in our constructor. So we use private chat service. And then we can say this.chatService.create room. And then we can use our this.form.get raw value. And afterwards, we could basically navigate back to our dashboard. So we can say we need our Angular router and we need our activated route so that we can make like a go to the parent route. So then we could say this.router.navigate And we could go to the dashboard again, and we have to set this relative. Where am I? Relative to our activated route, so the current route that we are at. And in our chat service in create room, we also then send like a snack bar. So let's try this again. So we want to create a room. Let's name it weekend description. Oh, sorry, reloading. Let's name it weekend description. We set like a user, for example, we search for Sam. We set this user. We create the room. Now you see we navigate back, and then we immediately get displayed like our room name weekend ID 1. And now you see here our room is having 2 users, one Sam and the second is mine, so that the account that I'm logged in. So I could make like another room, say Monday description, and now I'm not adding Sam, but I'm adding Walter. Now we have like another room where I'm with Walter. Here I am with Sam. And I can add like another room. Let's name it party, and let's name big party. And now we add like Sam to it. We add, who else do we have here? And Walter to it. So now you see we have another room where we have all the 3 users. So me, Sam, and Walter. And now if I make like a private room, a private tab, and I log in, for example, with sam@sam.com, and then you see Sam is just having 2 rooms. So because Sam is just in room 3 and 1, and Walter is here, for example, in room 2. So here Sam is just getting displayed room 3 and 1, so where he is at. So for example, if we now create like a room, let's name it test description, and then we try to add me, we add the user, we create the chat room. Then this just gets updated on reload. So this is something that we have to fix in the next videos, because this should also like catch the event rooms, so that it gets updated immediately, like in real time. So since we are not using here this ng on init, we can also remove it from the component so that we are a bit clearer. Now we can check again if we see anything here, and we can reformat everything. But it seems so white. So far, so good. Let's reformat all the stuff here. There's like a simple shortcut. I think it's Alt Shift and F in Visual Studio Code. This will handle like the reformatting for you. And so now we have everything here. So normally we subscribe to our rooms event in our dashboard component. So this should normally, let's see later on in the next video when we refactor this, probably all the stuff we can look for this, but right now we are now able to create a room. So now we can check against our story if we have done everything that we need. So we can now create like chat rooms. We can search in real times for users by their username. We can also remove users when we are like in the chat room creation or on the creation component. And if there are no rooms, we are displaying like now a hint on our dashboard. So then we can stop our Docker and we can commit all the changes. So this is video 11, edit room, or let's say Angular, edit room or chat room creation, and user search with autocomplete, and we can push it.